councillor staff, if we could just take a seat, and we're 10 to 15 seconds away from kick-off.
Thanks.
Welcome councillors, staff in the gallery. Again, great to have you along to see how we go. Acknowledgement of country council. Do we have councillor who will do that today?
Okay.
Councillor Deborah, thank you.
Lost a sheep. We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land, Cubby Cubby, on which this event is taking place. We would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their ongoing connection to the land, sea and community. We pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We also extend that respect to all other people present.
Thank you. Morning, Councillor Pollard.
No apologies.
I'd now like to hand over to Pastor Brian Cadats, who will share a few words of wisdom and then lead in prayer.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I hope you'll tolerate a few moments with me for a short preamble prior to prayer. I've always had an interest in rainfall, and being an old Mackay boy, Christmas 1990 and the first week of January 1991, we witnessed in Mackay the heaviest rainfall I'd ever seen. We were on our farm in the Pioneer Valley at that time, and in a 10-day period we received over 3,000 millimetres of rain, and on top of Kamala Range area there, Blue Mountains area, they received 6,000 millimetres. It averaged 25 millimetres an hour for 10 days, or an inch an hour in the old language. However, the Pioneer River and our farm was right on the river. It flooded, but not badly. But last year I saw and witnessed here in Gidley for one and several times a really severe flood and more water than we witnessed in Mackay with that sort of rainfall. So it sort of exposed and revealed again the situation for Gidley Township. And having had that interest in rainfall, I've always kept rain records. And I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but the Buchanan family at Goomberrian, they keep the official records for the Bureau. And they've done that since 1914. So I secured those records in my old job at Suncoast Gold Macadamias, and it was interesting. I got an update from them just this year. And it's interesting, and I think most people sort of suspected it, but I couldn't find reference to it anywhere. The rainfall for 2022 was the highest recorded rainfalls certainly since 1914. 119 years was the highest rainfall. And just to show how unpredictable the weather is, the first 6 months of 2023 is the driest 6 months since 1914. So we've gone from one extreme to the other. It makes life a little tedious and reminded me that we live in a very unpredictable world, full of surprises every day. Particularly we keep a bit of an eye on the news, and I see a news item that there's just short of 400 Queensland school teachers who have lodged claims for being abused and set upon by students in schools. They have claims against the department. That's just sort of mind-boggling and something that we really haven't thought about much in the past. And I see this morning's highlight where the state government is investing, or has invested, almost $750 million in the halfway house for those young juveniles who've broken the law. And one individual supported $1.9 million. These sort of figures blow our mind a little. But anyway, there's a little wise statement here: for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. And it is true. Just when we think we know the answers, the goose that laid the golden egg appears on the sideline, and we find ourselves in just as much trouble. One of the councillors, a brief word before the meeting, and I asked how he was. He said, "I'm fighting fit." Well, I've got to tell you, councillors, that's about where you need to be, particularly the first word. That's the operative word. We join in prayer. Loving Father, providing a genuine service to any community requires a selfless and focused commitment. It is our prayer that our collective councillors can clearly see the potential for success and achievement within this community, which they are elected to serve, and that they would strive to see that potential realised. We pray for the health and well-being of our councillors, their families, council staff and workers, that they can focus on the substantial tasks and decisions affecting the Gympie community. We further ask a blessing on Greater Australia and good things for all our citizens. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
We'll rise, have a minute silent to remember these references. Thank you. Councillors, section 1, disclosure of interest. Are there any disclosures for today's meeting? Councillor Hill?
7.3 declarable.
And me.
Also Councillor Devereux for the same 7.3.
Thank you.
Any other declarations, Councillor? 7.4. Do we have a trifecta? Yes.
I hope not. No, I think I'll make that the list.
Any other declarations, councillors?
Sorry. 7.2. Did I say that?
No.
7.2.
Not 7.3.
There's no other declarations, councillors. We don't have any leave of absence or apologies. Confirmation of minutes. We have a recommendation there in relation to the ordinary meeting held on the 24th of May. Councillor Smoothly moved, Councillor Stewart the second. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Two. We have a petition before us. Before, just wait for them to come up. I'd like to move an amendment to that recommendation, the one in relation to item 4.1.
Liam, did you want to come down as well?
That it be moved to that petition.
Is there a second meeting that we need to move
Sorry.
from May 30? Special meeting?
Yes, sorry.
Sorry.
We have another recommendation in relation to May 30 special meeting. Is someone to move? Councillor Smerdon?
Oh.
Councillor Milne? All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. In relation to item 4.1, I'd like to add to that recommendation that the CEO also report back to council.
It's actually a requirement of our standing orders.
I know, but it doesn't, it's not included in the recommendation. I think it's important to have it there. Is there any councillors with an objection to the change in that recommendation? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Polly, someone to second. Councillor Smerdon, Councillor Polly to speak.
I've actually been out and seen the issues the residents are having, so I'm happy for them to put this petition in and hope they can get some traction on it and get their flooding issues resolved.
Councillor Smith. Happy to second. Two speakers for the recommendation. Are there any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Polly to close.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 6.1, the quarterly questions taken on notice. I have the Ms. Hutch.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First report is quarterly questions taken on notice report. This report ensures that the CEO has all the questions answered that council has asked. The report was attached to the briefing note. Are there any questions on the report?
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux?
My question is, if we look at the second last one here on the 24th of May, one about the CCT improvements. I don't remember getting anything on the lenses before. Should we have received that did we receive that? Like, we normally get an email, don't we, with the answers on them from the question.
This is the report that's provided to you. Sometimes we get questions, depends on how they're asked, but this is a total summary of...
I understand what this is. I thought I would have seen all of it before, that's all.
Through Mr Mayor, so in some of these, councillors haven't seen the responses, so we have taken the liberty of chasing the responses up as part of the process for this report, so we're effectively closing the loop on those questions on notice.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart?
Yeah, I had asked Mr Mayor a question about the one that I raised on the 22nd of February about employment. Everyone got an answer to it in terms of the definition of office-based versus frontline, I just want to make a statement. Thank you for the answer. I found it rather convoluted and to me just emphasised the fact that it's an artificial dichotomy which we really should drop. But anyway, so thank you for that. But thank you for the answers.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I would tend to agree with Councillor Stewart. It is a fairly arbitrary line that we make in terms of our frontline versus our external facing employees.
Any other questions, councillors? I have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Jumping at once. Councillor Milne, someone to second. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Milne to speak.
This is a report that we said they were going to come bring all the questions on notice. They have recorded them through the minutes, which I did note, and this is a report coming back to us. So I'm pleased it's coming out in the public forum so they can be answered for the public. So thank you for the report.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, I found some of the answers very interesting, particularly the grading backlog with 374 kilometres, which bears out I'm probably getting more complaints about gravel roads at the moment than I ever have in my previous 7 years. Hopefully, I know there's staffing issues around that, amongst other things. But, so it's good to have these answers. Thank you.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Is there any speakers against? Any speakers for? Councillor Milne to close.
No, nothing further to add.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 6.2, the Gympie Regional Council Area Annual Show Holiday.
Through you, Mr Mayor, this report is about setting the dates for the annual show holiday. The Office of Industrial Relations requires a date to be set and sent to them by the 3rd of July. The dates set are for the parish of Gumboriong, that includes Mary and surrounds, is the same as South Burnett, which is the 12th of August 2024. The remainder of the LGA or local government area aligns to the Brisbane Show Holiday and the Gympie Show, which is, the Gympie Show Holiday, which is the 17th of May, because the show goes from the 16th, 17th, 18th of May 2024. Are there any questions or any concerns about these show dates?
I do have a question.
Councillor Deborah?
Sorry, cut in before you got to me. Thank you, Mayor Hartwig. I'm just wondering, and maybe Councillor Deputy Mayor Polly Smurden, sorry, can answer this. With Gameri being a country area, and with that show date conflicting with the ECA, does that cause any problems, or are the locals okay with it?
Hasn't been, it's been always like that. Yeah.
They're used to it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor and Councillor Deborah, we checked with the Gameri School, and also we've checked with the South Burnett Regional Council, so we do check with that area too to make sure that it's suitable for their operations.
I was more concerned about people that want to go to the ECA as for their business, whether that would interfere with the. Yeah.
That's why they have the show day that day. So
I think most residents, Councillor Devereux, understand that the only good thing they get from the ECA is influenza. Or a bad Dagwood dog, and the Gameri or the show is a far better opportunity for the family to enjoy themselves.
Fair enough.
Councillor Stewart?
Oh, I just know last year that we got the dates wrong for the Gympie show. So the Show Society got it right this year, we think?
Yes.
Councillor Polly?
Ms Hatch, could you confirm it's going to be flooding?
As we heard Bryce get out smoke. No, I can't do that. I'm hoping it'll be fine.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there, or two recommendations there before us in relation to Gameri and Gympie. Is someone to move? Councillor Stewart. Councillor Polly to second. Councillor Stewart to speak.
I'm always happy to have public holidays, and happy for the Gameri people to head to Brisbane for that show, and for Gympie people to stay in Gympie or do otherwise. So happy to move.
Councillor Polly.
It's good to be organised a year in advance, so planning the rain events for next year ahead. Happy to recommend.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add.
That will go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. LG Services Australia, item 6.3, snapshot report 2022 update. Hand over to you, Mr. Lewis.
Through you, Mr Mayor, this report provides a summary of the LG Services Australia report from Mr Scott Mason. I'm happy to take the report as read, noting that 19 of the recommendations are either complete or ongoing, and 2 are partially complete. The report also notes a number of issues which we are currently progressing as well, and those include the Youth Indigenous Cultural Centre, progressing the current industrial hub, securing our water futures, urgently addressing issues with our SCADA systems, undertaking a comprehensive fleet review, looking at our strategies around animal management and regulatory services, and also undertaking a GRIP program which involves the replacement of our IT legacy systems, including our ERP or enterprise solution and our records management systems.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
Thank you, Mayor Hartwig. Section 14, which is going on the culture of council. It's in the far right section at the bottom bit. All employers are now afforded the opportunity to undertake an exit interview. This can be undertaken either with either their direct supervisor, human resources partner, business partner or manager. So business partner, is that external?
No, it's not at this juncture.
Okay, so the second part of the question is, it has been discussed about having the opportunity for external. Is that a thing yet?
We can explore that, Councillor Devereux.
That's what I was told last time, yeah. Okay.
So we've now got a new HR manager on board. We didn't have that previously, so we can ask him to undertake that body of work.
Didn't have a new HR manager.
Sorry?
Last time you didn't have a new HR manager.
No, we did. We had an acting manager for some time.
Okay.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Polly?
Mr Lewis, so with the 10 or so things that are ongoing, is there a time frame on when they go on forever, some of these things? Or, I know some of them are pretty long term.
Some of them will, by their inherent nature, will be ongoing forever and a day. But others will be completed, and I guess what we're proposing is that we will bring a further report back to council in another 6 months' time to give council a further update, and in that report, the expected end dates of those projects.
So by the end of the year sometime? Yep. Okay.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation, Councillor Mills.
Just a small one, it's just with 13, and it's about the impact of the comments from the organisation, Tech One and the GRIP. And I know our budget afforded the positions to be backfilled. I've just got, because it is about preventing burnout of our staff, and will they be able to be backfilled, a lot of those positions?
Yeah, through the budget process, we assume that those employees that are seconded out of the business are funded through the project, and the budgets remain to enable backfilling. To be perfectly honest, we are struggling to recruit in all of those areas, and attempting to address issues around employee burnout, both from within the project and within the business as usual. And I think, to be honest, we are struggling to maintain service standards in both areas as we move forward. And to address that, what we're currently doing is looking at project delivery timelines for our GRID program, and whether they need to be tailored to meet and recognise the issues that we have as in our business as usual.
Any other questions, Councillor Polly?
To you, Mr Mayor, and probably the CEO, I was happy with the answer Mr Lewis gave about the 6 months' time, but I was just realising we're nearing the end of our useful life by March next year, so we're going to be in caretaker mode by Christmas time. But if the report comes to us, would like the report come to us so that if decisions had to be made, we can do it while we're allowed to. Maybe consider those things. I imagine by June, February, we can't do much.
We can still have a report presented to council.
Yep.
In terms of doing much, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean that the organisation is going to continue to follow and work on the 21 recommendations that are made, and just simply report back to us. And even in caretaker mode, we could still receive that report and note the report. I'm not sure.
I just thought we might be able to make decisions or direction changes based on the recommendations of the report, but no, it'll just be receive or...
If we're in caretaker, we couldn't, but up until we're in caretaker mode, we still can.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying. Can we have it before caretaker mode time?
Well, that's not
we're only due now. 6 months is December. I think caretaker starts
February sometime.
in February.
Yeah.
So we've still got the January meeting as well. I think there's enough space there.
That's fine.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. December, January,
Yep.
not in February. So.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we could aim to have that report back in December if council wishes.
A 6 month update would be appreciated, Mr. Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Milne, Councillor Polly to second, Councillor Milne to speak.
I'm happy to note the progress of this report. I know it might have been a little controversial having Scott Mason come into the organisation, but however, I feel that this has been an investment in the organisation to move us along from where we were coming from to where we're going through to the new CEO and progress us as a cultural moving forward, and plus some of our internal mechanisms. So I'm happy to see that there has been progress through here, and happy to note this report and look forward to the update.
Councillor Polly.
Now, to concur with Councillor Milne, happy to see where it's at and where it's going, and looking forward to the next 6 months.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Councillor Devereux.
Mayor, I made my thoughts on the report known the whole time. I don't think there was anything in it that any director worth their salt wouldn't have put in anyway. So, to me, I'm just going to... I resent the thing being there, so, yeah.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Milne to close.
I'm happy to move the vote, nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Polly, Baldock, Smurden, Hartwig, Jensen, Redmond, Milne. Against? Councillor Devereux. The motion is carried. Item 6.4, the May finance report. I'll hand over to Minister Lewis and Ms Hatherall.
Through Mr Mayor, I will noting that this report highlights financial outcomes to the 31st of May.
Mr Mayor, councillors. The report is our usual monthly report on the status of the finances for the organisation. You'll note that the summary income and expenditure statement has an additional column this month. It's a forecast to the end of June. This forecast is one of the best practice recommendations by Queensland Audit Office. We've taken the opportunity to try and look into our crystal ball and see what we think is going to happen by the 30th of June. Things have been moving quite rapidly. The federal government announced their budget. They weren't going to prepay our financial assistance grants, and now they've backed out on that. So what we've put in that forecast column is the information to the best of our knowledge at the time that this report was presented. So if there are any questions about the report.
Thank you, Ms Hatherall. Councillor Devereux.
Could you just explain to me, I'm assuming it's in here somewhere, but the FA grants on page 21.
Yep.
Am I reading that right? It says at negative 4852. Is that right?
In the actual statement, so the financial assistance grant was the one that the federal government said that they were not going to prepay in this financial year. We were going to miss out on $4.8 million of revenue in this financial year. They've since changed their opinion of whether or not they were going to prepay it, and they've told us that they will, last week or the week before, they told us they would pay it in the next 2 weeks.
That's right. So we've got...
I haven't seen it come into our bank account yet.
Got it as a negative on one page and then saying it's a positive variance on another.
And that's, I kind of explained that changed, and we tried to update this report, but I'm not sure. I was away sick.
Okay.
No excuse, but
No.
I may have got the wrong positive or negative.
I believe Prime Minister, a member of the government, made representations at the Local Government Association conference that they would do things as they had and pay up front. So that was a week or two ago that announcement was made.
They've indicated they're actually going to pay 100% of next year's financial assistance grant, hopefully in the next couple of days before the end of June.
Okay.
So that's in excess of $6 million of funds that we'll receive this financial year.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Are we going to get a summary on what happened at that? You just mentioned the
conference?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. If I could, Mayor, through the Mayor, page 25, talking about the depreciation expense, it says this increase is due to the impact of asset revaluation for rail infrastructure assets. So now that that's gone through, will that change?
Next year it will. So the depreciation we have to pay or we have to set aside an expense while we own those assets. The asset value increased significantly because we only had on our books what we physically delivered as part of the Rattler project. And obviously the rail infrastructure networks was much larger than that cost that we incurred during the project.
So how does it work? Is it like
percentage
of the year because it's no longer
yes,
this?
there'll be a percentage. So as soon as the assets are actually disposed of, from an accounting perspective, the depreciation stops.
Thank you.
And through Mr Mayor, that was part of the problem with in the original budget assumed that the Rattler transaction would actually did. So we were only forecasting 6 months or so of depreciation.
You all assumed that. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, under the capital project expenditure, it paints a fairly balanced picture, I guess. But then when I looked at how it's divided up between different parts of council, I find a lot more up and down. So water and sewage, the capex is quite a bit over. I'm assuming that might be because of the South Side project, but I'm guessing there. For the general, our capex is considerably under. Our resource recovery, it's over, and our disaster recovery, it's under budget. So I think when we start drilling down a bit, we get some bit more interesting figures, and sometimes it might be good to have some explanation of that.
I actually, one of the items that I have a look at before I come down is usually what our status is year to date for the capital program, and you're right, there are unders and overs in the individual projects. We haven't had a third budget review due to staffing constraints. Part of what we're trying to do with the infrastructure team is actually try and forecast what we need to carry forward for those underspent projects. There will be a review at the end of the financial year once we finalise the expenditure. It's pleasing to note, though, if we look at the pure dollars of the capital program, I think yesterday we had spent $31.7 million of the $32.8 million capital program. So the team really have pushed forward. You'll also note, as part of the roads budget, the roads projects, there's a significant amount of money that is being expended on the recovery of the floodworks. That's ramped up in the last couple of periods that we've been reporting, and some of those budgets are overspent, and I think that's because at the time we were putting the budget review together, we were including amounts that we thought were going to be indicative of these projects, and those projects have since had their scopes expanded. So it's one of those things where it's an ongoing monitoring.
Councillors, we have a recommendation there in relation to the financial report for May 23. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second. Councillor Polly, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Mr Mayor, it's good to see our finances are basically on track. There's always some give and take at different points in time, I guess. And also that we are definitely solvent. We've got money in the bank in case something goes wrong short term. So that is good. So I'm happy to move that we receive this report.
Councillor Polly.
Like Councillor Stewart, I'm just happy to see that it's progressing, and Plumbing Airways is starting to level out and should come in for a good landing by the end of the year.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart can close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 6.5, amendment to the 23-24 schedule of fees and charges.
Mr Mayor and councillors, in the May general meeting for council, you adopted our proposed draft schedule of fees and charges for 2023-24. We have subsequently been made aware of some legislative changes around the library, which are small changes, but we need to reflect them in the fees and charges. And there was also some changes in relation to some development applications. To ensure that council can collect the fees and charges in accordance with legislation or other decisions by council, we need to make this amendment, and we've presented it to you for your consideration and hopefully adoption.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
What is it? The interlibrary thing?
It's the interlibrary loans, so the overarching body that controls the exchange of books between libraries sets a particular fee that's charged for those books to be moved between libraries, from my understanding.
And that's per book?
Yes.
They could just buy the book, couldn't they, for about that price?
Yeah, but if you're looking at a book coming from Sydney and going down to Brisbane, I guess the transportation costs and everything, I'm not sure. I'm not sure of how the library governing body consider these and release them, but that's...
Sometimes the book's not available. So I know I've ordered books to the library and they've bought new ones. So I've ordered
That's okay, but
other times
get them in.
coming from another library in there.
So just, it's a Gympie to other region libraries, not within, like Gympie to Kilkevin or something like
No,
that.
definitely.
Oh, right, that's what I thought it was.
It's like a courier fee for outside of.
You have to go outside. Okay, that makes sense, because that's
If you've
the
got a book
cost.
from the state library or something like that, then that's the fee
Yeah.
that's required to transport it up here and transport it back.
You gotta pay the fee when you go west, mate.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Polly the second, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Sometimes adjustments need to be made to fees and charges and, so that's it, I guess.
Councillor Polly?
As I said, changes happen, and I suspect this won't be the last little correction we make to the fees and charges, but happy to do what's got to be done.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart opposed.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.6, annual valuation consultation. Mr. Lewis Haverall again.
Mr Mayor and councillors, every year the Valuer General gives councils the opportunity to have some input into their consideration of whether or not they undertake valuations across the regions that we represent. We're at the point where we need to submit a recommendation or a request from council in light of the fact that I think we've had 3 valuations in the last 3 years. The council officer's recommendation is that we ask the Valuer General not to do a revaluation, and we just want to come to council to get your input into that.
Councillor Devereux.
Why are they asking when they just do what they want anyway?
You would have,
Why waste everyone's time?
through you, Mr Mayor, you would have to ask the department.
I think I've met with the Minister and department staff in relation to what they did this year, because we had 2 years in a row, and some councils do ask for a valuation to be done in a particular year. Every 3 years, I think the legislation says it must be done, and some councils choose after 2 years to have it done again, or 1 year. And your question, Councillor Devereux, was a question I asked them. If we say no, we don't want it done, why do you do it anyway? One of the reasons was if there is significant movement or perceived movement in the valuations, either up and down, they use that as a reason or a justification to go ahead and do it. At the end of the day, it is up to them. I guess they're just seeking a bit of input, but it is frustrating when council does say, no, we'd rather wait for 3 years, and they do it anyway.
Through you, Mr Mayor, in all seriousness, they're required by legislation to ask for the input of the key stakeholders.
Councillor Smoot.
In light of recent times, do you think that maybe some of the values have gone down?
I'm not a valuer.
Then that point was raised at the meeting, and they don't care. They do their valuation at a particular time, and that's it. And
I just think that does it run. Next year we may reflect.
but the only, and the discussion I had with them was every time they do a reevaluation, it actually affects different ratepayers in the same rate category differently across the region, and creates an issue for us as an organisation to try and smooth out those increases, or if they are decreases, to smooth out those decreases. And even though price values or property land values may go up, we still, if they go up by 20%, rates don't increase by 20%. We try and smooth that out by changing the rate in the dollar, but it's never completely fair and equitable right across the category of the band. So having them do it annually just creates another headache for us as a council, because rural properties on the eastern side may have a different valuation or devaluation than rural properties on the western side, and it just creates inequity. It's frustrating. Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Milne, someone to second. Councillor Waldock, Councillor Milne to speak.
Oh, I know they have to ask us, and it's nice to be asked what our opinion is on the matter. From down the coast, we did have some large jumps, so I'm happy them to not take an annual valuation, to hopefully let that ride for a year or two. But yeah, it's not actually up to us at the end of the day, so I'm happy to say no as an opinion, but I know the realisation that anything could happen, so happy to resolve to request that we say no.
Councillor Waldock.
Yeah, this is a nice way to say, yeah, no, thank you. And it creates efficiency, so we can just carry on with what we need to do.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Councillor Devereux.
I just refuse to be a part of the rest. If they're going to do it anyway, they can make their mind up. That's what I think.
I know. Any other speakers for or against? With that, we'll Councillor Milne to close.
Oh, just closing that, yeah, they may make their mind up, but they do take obviously our position and our reasoning. I guess there's reasoning, we're just going to go, we just don't write no. We put probably reasonings in our opinion on why we don't. So hopefully they do consider those in making their decision. And yes, I'm happy to put this forward to them to give us a voice and our residents a voice, because I know they don't really want it. So thank you.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Polly, Waldock, Smooth, Hardwick, Jensen, Freedman, Milne. Against? Councillor Devereux. The motion is successful. Item 6.7, tourism branding. Mr. Lewis and Mr. Dort.
Mr Mayor, I'll hand over to Mr Dawn to which was presented at a workshop.
Morning, Mr Mayor, councillors. Today I'm happy to put before you the updated tourism brand for LC and the Gympie region. Take the report as read, but just like to point out 2 intricacies with it. First of all, this brand was created entirely in-house by GRC staff. So we're very proud of the work that they have done to get to this point, noting the expense or the cost saved if we were to go out to contract. Secondly, based on conversations we've had in previous workshops, giving council an undertaking that we'll be back in July, hopefully, to explore the sub-region conversation. We're in the process of doing some background research for that to come back to council in July.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Freedman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have made it known previously that I find our brand, Visit Gympie Region, to be uninspiring, to be nice. I could use other words. And at the same time, we've got some really good sub-regions, Kalula Coast, Mary Valley, etc. I just wonder if there's any way we can use the sub-regions instead of using Visit Gympie Region, but selectively use the sub-regions, which quite frankly do sound worthwhile visiting.
Through Mr Mayor, I completely agree with you, Councillor Freedman, and we've had conversations around how we activate those. We'll bring a workshop report back in July with some ideas we have around that. The Visit Gympie Region moniker is something we can't change at the moment, but we can certainly activate the sub-regions through various marketing campaigns, and we'll give you an undertaking that we'll do that.
Councillor Jensen.
What happened to the leaf in the G?
Oh, the leaf in the G, when we were quality testing that, Councillor Jensen, it didn't print very well at all. It looked terrible. Yeah. It looked nice electronically, but when printed it was quite blurry.
Lost the leaf.
Councillor Stewart.
I just a little bit concerned, Mr Mayor, that Gympie's been put down as a brand, and that's why I might completely agree with that. I think Gympie's a wonderful place. Someone who moved from outside to Gympie and made it my home. I'm proud of Gympie. So I'm proud of the Gympie region as a brand. Thank you.
I don't think that was the point.
Any other
Well,
Councillor Fredman, here we go. Ding, ding, ding.
I love Gympie probably more. Councillor Stewart, we are talking seriously here about attracting people with exciting advertising, making it appealing, making it a place you've got to visit. That's totally different to the fact that Gympie is a great place to live. It's the art of appealing to people. And quite frankly, I hope no one thinks that I dislike Gympie. I love it. It's got tourism value in its heritage, but it doesn't send a message that I would like to see out there, which would see thousands of southerners clambering to get here because we've got the sea, we've got the trees, and we've got whatever it is out west. It's a case of we are trying to appeal to people.
Are you suggesting you should be the face of the Mary Valley, Councillor Fredman?
Might as well have a mirror, Mr Mayor.
You wait until I get my line.
Any other, I'm sure Councillor Smurden is interested in a comment. No, he's going to sit tight.
I don't respond to pensioners, but anyway.
Councillor Mills.
Mr Mayor, could you just explain Council's role as a local tourism organisation, because we are under the banner of the region and the restrictions that may bring, and why we're bringing this branding through Council?
Sure. Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Milne, we are tasked with, under Visit Sunshine Coast, with, I guess, leading the tourism space at a high level for the region, noting that there's a lot of tourism operators that operate in our region, and some really successful tourism operators. We're essentially tasked with helping develop the industry within the region, and the branding plays a big part in that, because tourism operators can leverage off our branding reach. If we had a brand prior to this that was working, this would not be a conversation, but we've got about 3 different monikers out there that people relate to the Gympie region and in fact the wider region as well. So this project is consolidating all of that collateral into one overarching marketing suite that we can use to advertise our region and in future our sub-regions to the rest of the country.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Mill, someone to second? Councillor Polly? Councillor Mill to speak?
Being from down the Coolor Coast, tourism is one of our main drivers for economics. Knowing that we are the LTO, which is the local tourism organisation, it's internal to the council, not external to council. This is actually really important to have a concise branding image we have lacked before. Tourism probably hasn't been a main focus of council for a couple of years, and to hack through this, we can actually start to move on with our tourism collateral, our strategies, marketing, and getting our visitor guides out there as well. So I'm just really happy to see something come across the table. I did have a few reservations about the in-house and using just our own skills, because we could have gone out and got some data and background behind it for just, the data for Riot. But looking at the branding in itself, and they have worked with Visit Sunshine Coast and higher up, it does fit, and I'm happy to move for it because we need something. We can't wait any longer, and yeah, it's a good investment of their time. I think they've done quite a good job in-house, so well done.
Councillor Polly?
I think rule number 1 of marketing is, if you've got a good image and a brand, don't change it. If it works, don't change it. And number 4 is you need a unified approach. So clearly we didn't have either of those 2 working in our favour, and I think this does help to make a slight tweak and unify that. As we said, there were different approaches, so bring it back to the one theme, and so just the small changes will go a long way to promoting the Gympie and greater region to the world. Happy to move.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? The other speakers for? Councillor Jensen first and Councillor Devereux.
Sad that we lost the league, but you've done a good job, Tom, you and your team. I like that you have created your own colours, even though I'm not a fan. it's still a good job. Looking forward to the sub-region talk. But yeah, this is good.
Councillor Deborah?
You've done a great job. The whole team should be proud. I can't wait to see the end result, and I look forward to being able to hand it out.
Any other speakers for? Just on a similar but not the same note, I think, Tom, you and the team have done an excellent job, particularly in the event space. And whilst we may not have had one overarching brand, we have certainly had international reach with some of the results that the team has delivered around events in our region, new events to our region, bringing thousands of people to come and experience wonderful stuff on the eastern and western sides of the river. So it's, and the feedback I get from the visitors is exceptionally positive, and the word of mouth collateral that you have created through those events far outweighs any colour palette, because when someone has a comment that is positive, it doesn't matter what documents, strategies or bits and pieces behind it. If you don't have that positive interaction, that human interaction, nothing else really matters. So, I know I've mentioned it to the team in the past, but exceptional work in that space. I know there are a lot of things over the coming years that will grow in that space, and it's been a testament to the extra mile that the staff go to, the little things they do that other regions won't do, the extra effort they'll make. They'll be down doing a barbecue at 4 o'clock in the morning, leaving Gympie at 2:30 to get there, so that the people that are coming to our region have a family-like experience and go away and tell their friends. And it's very, very proud of the work that the team has done in that space. It's been exceptional. Any other comments, councillors, before we vote? Councillor Milne to close.
Again, I'm really happy that we have a branding that we can provide our tourism framework around, but it's all about the actual people that we have in the region. It's a collective experience that we need to give our visitors. It's the imagery of all of our sub-regions and those operators that do provide those experiences. So when we actually have this to frame that, so it's just a recognition thing that all ties to our region, I think we can move forward. So yeah, happy to have this endorsed.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Good. Item 6.8, the procurement panel.
Mr. Mayor, the evidence on the floor, should I declare?
Yes, you probably should, councillor. Yes. We just have a declaration before we begin.
Yeah. My daughter is the general manager of the Rainbow Beach Rec Club, which is in here under schools. I'd like to say the meeting though.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
It was
Sorry, we've just got a declaration to deal with.
It's only about the pool on this one, is it?
Is the pool in this one?
What was cool?
I'm trying to find it.
It's the next one, isn't it?
Pool's in this
This
one.
is nice. Look.
Go to 6.8, procurement panel.
It's on page 57.
That's not this one.
No, it's not this one.
No,
Oh, have I gone too far?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Henry.
Oh, well, next
Okay.
one then. Sorry.
One after properly.
you do a couple up.
3, wasn't it?
Still.
The Rainbow Beach Aquatic Centre is
7.
Oh, you are.
Surf life saving.
7.4, so we'll just
Sorry.
take that declaration so we're on to this item.
Mr. Page.
That's right. We'll hand over to our staff to lead us through this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I'm going to hand this procurement across to my coordinator of procure to pay, and he'll run through the highlights and summarise this report for you.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Morning, Mr. Mayor, morning, councillors. You see before you the procurement panel report for this month. There are 6 items in total seeking council resolution today. There are 3 specialist supplier recommendations before you to add to the specialist supplier list. There are 2 post-market recommendations to award contracts, and the sole and specialised supplier list for 23-24 is before you for adoption. I'll take the report as read and open up for any questions.
Councillor Smoot.
I noticed with the bulk fuel delivery, we only had 2 tenders.
That's correct.
One of them didn't give a price at all. Is there-
No, they gave basically a proposal of their potential there into hydrogen, solar. They completely did not meet the specification of the tender.
I just trying to understand why we've only had 2 tenders when we've got, a couple of fuel companies in town that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was put out to market, public tender, through vendor panel. All the suppliers within that category on vendor panel will have notifications, and will have chose not to submit.
Yeah, Councillor Wardle.
In the past, when we go to tender and we only receive one that's conforming, normally we send it back out a second time to capture more if we can. Is this the case this time, or we didn't do a second tender?
The recommendation before you is for Corbett, who are incumbent. Going back to the market and hoping that we get more respondents is not necessarily what we always do. If the respondent meets the requirements and under evaluation scores and meets the specification, we would put that recommendation to you.
That's fine, thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Frederick.
Just on that matter, it does concern me that there must be something in our specification which is turning suppliers off. I'd like to think in future situations anyway that if we only get one tender, would a report be prepared for council just in case the specification should be changed to get more tenders? I just think, Mr Mayor, that it rings alarm bells for me when only one person tenders. And there must be a reason which I'd like to know about as to why others didn't tender. Is it because we're difficult to deal with? Is it because we're incompetent? Is it because for some other reason? I don't know. I'm just nervous about accepting that we got it right when we only received one tender. Given that it's an existing supplier, it's probably okay, but in future, I don't like alarm bells like this.
Councillor Polly.
I was just going to say, there's only one thing that's more volatile than throwing a match into a bucket of fuel, and that's the price of fuel itself. So I couldn't quite understand why, it seems like they're quoting on the price, because that's irrelevant, that 6 hours after they quoted it to a degree. So
Yeah.
wouldn't it be like matched to the gate price? Because we know it's coming out of the refinery in Brisbane. That's that, put on there 1.9 cents to deliver it, whatever it is, that's the fee. But
It is based on the gate price, which obviously will fluctuate depending on the market price of fuel. And then their delivery price is the price that is more or less fixed.
yeah, so there's some fixed items in there that they control.
Yeah.
Right.
That's correct.
Because I was just looking at the cents per litre, I thought that's a waste of time, that is. But
Yeah, I think it's to give you an idea of the current pricing and where we reached an assumption of the contract spend, annual spend.
yeah, okay.
Through the chair, just to Councillor Frederick's point, there's something that we should look at there, so we'll take that on board. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, with the free tree program, which I always forget about, so never when I go to Landcare do I claim my 2 free trees every 6 months. Can there be something put in the rates notice just as a reminder to residents that they can get 2 trees or whatever, 2 tube stock from Landcare or City Farm?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think I've had some conversations with the comms team. We'll be looking at what inserts and we can include in the rates notice and what other communication methods we can have to get that message out.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Deborah.
Through the Mayor, recommendation 6, it says the contract term will be for 12 months with a ×2 12-month extension. options at the sole discretion of council. So that's council with a small c, which is the organisation. So does that mean it won't come back to elected council each year?
That is correct.
That's correct, yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor Devereux?
I've got one for you, Mayor Hartwig. Will we be voting on these recommendations individually?
That's how we do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? We have recommendation 1 before us there. That we note the minutes of the procurement panel meetings, number 95, someone to move. Councillor Polly, someone to second. Councillor Smoot, Councillor Polly to speak.
I'm just happy to note that these are the minutes of the meeting and we're here discussing them now, so happy to recommendation 1 at least.
Councillor Smoot. 2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Now the speakers for. Councillor Polly to close.
Please proceed.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Recommendation 2. That we approve an exemption for the requirements to tender for quote for decision software provided by Decisions. Someone to move. Councillor Devereux, someone to second. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Devereux to speak.
We need it, so happy to go to the vote.
Councillor Stewart.
There's only so many software providers and only so many pretty unique specialist software providers, so there's not much choice really.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Devereux to close.
Nothing more.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Recommendation 3, that we resolve under the Local Government Act for an exemption for requirements to tender or quote for District Landcare Incorporated and Cooloola City Farm Nursery. Someone to move. Councillor Milne, someone to second. Councillor Stewart. Councillor Milne to speak.
Oh, I'm just hoping this, makes the free tree program easier to roll out, and I was interested that was actually 4 trees a financial year instead of 2. I always thought it was 2, so I just got to double up. Cool. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Both Landcare and City Farm provide great service and great tube stock, so I'm happy to continue utilising the services.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Milne to close.
Happy to move the vote.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Recommendation 4 in relation to surf life saving, that we allow an exemption for the requirements to tender. Someone to move. Councillor Milne, someone to second. Councillor Smoot and Councillor Milne to speak.
I don't think there's many providers of surf life saving, so yeah, happy to provide the exemption, I guess.
Councillor Smoot.
Provide great service, happy to say.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Councillor Devereux.
This recommendation to me and the next one, examples of asking for something and then it not happening. I'm disappointed with where we are, that we're still going that way. I would have liked to have seen some more put into it, but it's as it is. Thank you.
Any other speakers for or against? I'm well aware that the organisation, as requested by Council, approached the Surf Life Saving Club to see if we could have these funds go directly to our local surf club. And I was personally disappointed that it wasn't a service that they could provide. So with no other operators available, I think it's important that we have our beaches safe when our wonderful volunteers at the Rainbow Beach Surf Life Saving Club are not able to man it. So I'm very happy to support this recommendation. Councillor Milne to close.
Oh, it's just the exemption, isn't it? So yeah, happy to have an exempt.
With that, we will go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Polly, Councillor Baldock, Councillor Smoot, Councillor Hartman, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Friedman, Councillor Milne. Against? Councillor Devereux. The recommendation is carried. Now we have recommendation 5, that council resolves to accept the proposal received by Surf Life Saving Queensland for the providing of services to monitor our Rainbow Beach. Is there someone to move? Councillor Milne, Councillor Stewart second. Councillor Milne to speak.
This is actually a vital service provided to Rainbow Beach, safety of our residents and our tourists especially, because surf conditions are quite volatile at times. It is a difficult service to provide through the Surf Life Saving of Rainbow Beach. They couldn't do it themselves, but they do supplement with their own volunteers on the times that this isn't covered. One of the things I found that was quite good in the contract is that they have to manage a beach mat if it is provided by the Surf Life Saving or someone else, which was always one of the blockers of actually providing that all abilities access to the beach. So I thought that was a really good inclusion to the contract, and I'm happy to have this proposal accepted by council and keep the swimmers safe.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, I know that staff did look at some alternatives. The local Surf Life Saving Club, I can understand fully why they said no, because that means they'd have to have all the admin stuff and backroom stuff of workplace health and safety, training, insurance, whatever. So I can fully understand them saying no. As many decade or more than a decade ago, my son went through the Surf Life Saving Club. He became a professional lifeguard that helped him get through uni. So that option is still open even with the Surf Life Saving Queensland having the contract rather than local surf clubs, because they can draw on whoever's been trained locally anyway, one way or another. And I do know that, I think a report somewhere said that Noosa Council looked at doing it themselves. They've got several beaches and it was not profitable, was not worthwhile for them to do it themselves, even with several beaches. Us with one beach, it's going to be even less workable. So, I'm happy. It'd be nice if there's more providers. There's not, so this is what we've got to go with.
2 speakers for the recommendation, and speakers against. Councillor Devereux.
Thank you, Mayor Hartwig. I recall early on in the term we took a vote here to give the Surf Life Saving extended lease so they could go for a loan. They've got a prime bit of real estate there. And I thought at the time, yeah, of course, they're providing lifesavers and all the rest. I assumed at that point, because I didn't know about this, that was what it was all about, that they were going to provide the lifesavers. And when I found out, I think it was the next meeting, that we were voting to put this much money in, I was absolutely gobsmacked. So, no, I don't like the idea of council providing the lifesavers when council already provides the Life Saving Club a prime bit of real estate at next to no money, and I just think this should be where they're putting their money into. So I don't know exactly what their finances are, the situation, everything else, but that's what I assumed at the time. So I just will not back this. Thank you.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Fredman.
I'm speaking for it, Mr Mayor. Being a person who spent way too many hours in the past in the surf and paying the price now with the bit of skin trouble, but this is not negotiable. Not negotiable to me. I'm grateful that Surf Life Saving Queensland is able to provide this service. If it wasn't for them, I do believe we would have more tragedies at Rainbow Beach. It can be a pretty challenging surf at times. So it's with considerable delight that I am going to vote for this, because surf safety is everyone's business, and it's great to be able to call on an organisation at a cost to do this service for us.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Waldock.
I too have spent a bit of time on the beach, in fact years out at sea. I know how evil Mother Nature can be and how unsafe the beaches can be in our region. Surf life saving, it's all in the name. If it wasn't surf life saving, it'd be called surf death. Put a dollar value on a life. If it was my own family, it'd be a lot more than that. So if we didn't have surf lifesavers, our due diligence or our responsibility would be to put up signs on the beach that says we don't recommend swimming here. So what does that look towards our tourism industry? Not good. So definitely all for this.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Milne to close.
I just reiterate this is a very important contract, especially for the Rainbow Beach, for tourism, as pointed out, and safety of our own residents going down there. I do have children, it's not a conflict. Everyone, please, got someone that will swim in those surf conditions, and even just identify when it is not safe or it is safe, just to have someone there. And look, it does allow for peak times and increase those lifesavers. And the Surf Life Saving Club or Surf Club does cover the times that there are no lifesavers covered under this contract, so they do actually provide a really good service. So I'm happy, and like Councillor Wardock said, you really can't put a price on a life, and when you look at what that is, that's nothing in a year if it's one life we save. So happy to have this go through.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Polly, Wardock, Smurden, Artwood, Jensen, Redmond, Milne. Against? Councillor Devereux. The motion is carried. Recommendation 6 in relation to bulk fuel delivery from Pembroke.
I'm not entirely comfortable with this recommendation. I would like to amend it if I can.
Do you wish to make an amendment?
I do. I'm quite happy to approve it for the 12 months with the 2 12-month extensions options at the sole discretion of council. I can't agree with.
Would you like that changed to that?
Just one 12-month period.
With a report back to elected representatives prior to.
I think we should look at how we tender for this and why we only receive such limited tenders, and I think that could be sorted out in the next 12 months.
So you would like to modify the recommendation that the contract be issued for 12 months, and that prior to the extension being granted, a report be presented to council identifying some of the concerns expressed by Councillor Fredman around why we haven't received a large number of tenders. Councillor Fredman?
Question, what did the specification say? If the spec said it's for 1 month with an option of another 1 year for an option of another 2, we can't move a motion contrary to the specification. Would you please advise whether Councillor Smurden's...
Do you have that information?
So this was sent out, this is to create a panel, a register of pre-qualified suppliers. It's not necessarily for one supplier to be on that panel, multiple suppliers.
We're in recommendation 6 in relation to the bulk fuel delivery.
Yep, the bulk fuel delivery. So this was an RPQS that was put to market as an RFT tender. So it was not envisaged that this would be to one supplier solely. This is a panel arrangement, which means that we could have multiple suppliers on that arrangement and utilise whichever one gives us the best price or service. So there was no guarantee of work. The actual term of any panel arrangement is a 12-month with the option to extend because of the type and nature of the contract that's set up. So in the past on these type of arrangements, we have given a 12-month term, and at the end of that 12 months, the business can decide to extend and carry out a market refresh, which means we go back to market to add suppliers to that panel and extend the current incumbent so that we can deliver to supply the service. So that just clarifying where we are, which would lead to the question of, can this come back after 12 months? We can carry out a market refresh in 12 months, which would come back to council in order to add the suppliers that tender and meet the specifications to be added to that panel.
So I think if we can just change the recommendation modifications that Councillor Spurt would like be that I'll just go to Councillor Fredman before we.
Mr Mayor, I think we may have a technicality here that requires more research. I don't believe we can. I'd like to know for certain whether the option is in the specification.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's at the tenderer's option, discretion, but then in the report you say it's council's discretion. So I'm just getting mixed messages here.
Okay, I'll clarify that for you, Mr Mayor. The contract was put out on a 12-month with council's discretion to extend for 2 12-month period. So at the end of that 12 months, it is council's discretion whether an extension would be offered to those suppliers. So we are not in breach of the specification if we choose not to extend after a 12-month period.
Councillor Milne?
Just a question of clarification. So what you're saying, this is a panel. So in the refresh, you will be putting another request for tender out near the end of this 12 months to try and get other tenderers. So basically you're going to do a procurement process to try and get other tenderers anyway. But if we don't have the 12 months extensions in here and we don't get any other tenderers, then
you would extend.
You'd have to extend anyway.
Well, there's no guarantee in the recommendation that a refresh will be done.
No.
The recommendation allows the organisation without a refresh to extend the contract for another 2 years after the 12-month period. And I think Councillor Smerdon is wanting that refresh to be done and the information presented to council. If I understand, is that correct, Councillor Smerdon?
So it's council's discretion to extend. So after 12 months, we do not have to extend the current. It's our option to extend.
That's correct.
Very clear in the specification and what was released to market, to clarify for councillor.
So I think perhaps the modification Councillor Smerdon would like is that a refresh be done prior to 12 months and that a report be presented to council before a new contract or an extension is granted. Yep. Is that in line with what you were chasing, Councillor Smerdon?
Any objections, Councillor?
Wait a minute.
Through Mr Mayor, part of the problem with this contract may be the way that we approach the market and seeking a panel. So I'd be loath to have a refresh of the panel in the recommendation. I would rather see that a further review report be brought back to council on how we approach the market and how we get more suppliers in before we approve the any 12-month extension.
I think the intention from council, in line with what Councillor Fredman has said, is exactly that, Mr Lewis. Have a look at why we have only got one. If it needs to be a refresh of the specifications, then let's deal with that as an organisation so that we, if we are able to, attract more suppliers so we hopefully have a more competitive arrangement for our fuel supplies and then that be presented to council. So if there's some confusion around terminology of refresh, I think as elected representatives we see that as looking at why we have only got one tenderer, making the changes to the specification if possible to attract more tenderers and then bringing that back to council for consideration. Not just simply control of delete, so to speak. Councillor Polly?
Through Mr. Chair, just 2 questions. So hypothetically, if recommendation 6 doesn't pass right now, where does that leave the organisation? What are we paying rack rate or no contract or what is
the current contract in place with no further extensions expires?
Yep.
At the beginning of July.
Yep.
So we could maintain the service, but not under a contractual agreement without extending the current agreement in place.
So it could be whatever price they want to charge to a degree, yeah?
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially. Second question then is, there doesn't seem to be any, like I say, so they're charging a fee per service basically, but there's no increase. Like look at the surf low saving, you can see they've put on 4% increase every year, which, okay, that's fair enough. There seems to be no increase, or is there somewhere in the contract that's chosen?
Yeah, so a panel arrangement allows when we take up the option to extend for a refresh of their rates,
Right.
Because it's done under a schedule of rates, so
Yes.
their delivery to site, let's
Yeah.
say for example, will be on a specific rate,
Yeah.
kilometre, whatever it may be. And at the end of that 12 months, that
Okay.
gives the suppliers the option to refresh their schedule of rates.
Okay, so the 1.5 million estimate is correct for 12 months. Could be
Yeah.
a bit
It's
more.
based on our annual spend on
Yeah.
ULP and diesel.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, we have a modified recommendation there. Are we all happy with that recommendation?
Yeah.
And our understanding,
Do we need to,
Councillor Stewart?
do we need to specify, Mr Mayor, what the report's about? Like a report in regard to procurement processes or something like that, presented to council?
My only concern, I appreciate what you raised, Councillor Stewart, is that there'll be so much detail that things may get lost in the recommendation. I think everyone here is very clear on what we're seeking. Councillor Fredman and Councillor Spurden have been very clear that they, on what they want to understand, and if there is any concern in the organisation, they could either refer to the live stream or go through the director to the CEO and get some clarification. But we want to understand why we've only got one tenderer. Is it our specifications that are too stringent? Can we make some changes that open it up so more suppliers can tender, so we get the best outcome rather than just one?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I believe the officers have a clear understanding of what council is seeking in relation to the recommendation.
We have a recommendation there. Councillor Smurden to move, Councillor Fredman to second, Councillor Smurden to speak.
It's a service that we've got to have, but I think it's a service that we can try and get the best price that possible. And you know, getting only one tender sort of restricts the amount of bargaining that we have. So I just wonder why we don't get it more than one, and it's the reason why I amended the recommendation. Happy to move.
Councillor Fredman.
We need fuel. We've got to keep the wheels of our graders turning. This will ensure we get continuity. As far as I'm aware, Corbett Group is a good supplier and they're local. So let's just say we've given staff a task to answer our questions within 12 months, and let's keep going in the meantime.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Polly.
I think despite the issues around this recommendation, knowing the Corbett family, they're local, having a similar local family business, the money will get spent here. The employees are all here, the wages are paid here, the taxes paid here. Gympie will not miss out. It's a good choice.
Any other speakers for or against? No, Councillor Spurden to close.
I realise they're a local company. I realise that money will be spent locally, but I think council has still got to try and get the best price possible. So if we can modify this arrangement and actually end up with more than one tender, then it's better for the council. So that's why the other end.
With that, we will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. To recommendation 7, council resolve that it is satisfied with the supplier list and the sole supplier list and specialist supplier list, and granting exemption to seeking tenders and quotes if applicable. Someone to move? Councillor Stewart. Someone to second? Councillor Milne. Councillor Stewart to speak.
There are lots of services that are specialists, and there's very limited suppliers. And going to tender, going to market is an expensive process in itself. So if there's only one supplier, we are better off simply going to them and seeking to negotiate a good price with that particular supplier. So I am happy to move the list. There's lots of them do services to the library or software services and various other things as well.
Councillor Milne.
Oh, our procurement practices are highly regulated, and there are certain suppliers that only do something that we need, so there is just a procurement process to do it. So yeah, happy to have these guys on the list and trust that we may find more that we may need to do and update. But this list is, I believe, comprehensive for what we need to do right now. So yeah, happy to. I'm satisfied that they are meet the requirements.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? No other speakers for. Councillor Stewart to close.
I think that
That will go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We might just take a quick break before we begin section 7 there. If we're back by 1:45, drink the water at the company.
And I'm not sure what the teachers' school is.
I haven't seen all of mine.
Welcome councillors, gallery and staff back to our ordinary meeting. We'll begin with item 7.1, the Community Sustainability Director report. I'll hand over to Mr Burns. Hold on a minute. Have you?
No.
I don't think it's.
There's
no conflict.
No, not yet.
I get scared.
You're keen, you can.
You just want to make a declaration for the entire meeting, councillor.
Might as well. We don't have to waste it.
I'll hand over to Mr Burns.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, this is our quarterly report. We have done this report before. I will take the report as being read, although I will beg for forgiveness at the length of the report. As councillors would be aware, the Community Sustainability Directorate is quite large and covers a very wide-ranging sequence of activities through council's portfolio of services. In addition to that, we've had a fairly active quarter, and the team like to share with councillors specifically that range of services and some of the successes that councillors should be proud of that the team have been able to deliver into the community. Having said that, I'm happy to leave it as read and willing to take questions.
Any questions, councillors? It's an extensive report. If there's no questions, we have a recommendation there before us.
Actually, I do have one.
Councillor Devereux.
Through the Mayor, on page 72, it's pretty much the last page, it says ongoing and upcoming work. RV implementation project stage 1 is now complete with the formalisation of the RV site at Kilkeven and improvements to Macintosh Park. Now, I saw at Macintosh the dump point, which was excellent. The formalisation of the RV site at Kilkeven. Could you just give me something on that? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there is a site at Kilkeven. There was a requirement to put a fence up between the childcare services and the actual site to demarc the site. That was essentially it, with some signage to go up, and that signage has now gone up and that fence is in place.
So the area that I believe used to have RVs, which is on the other side of what was the track, what's happened?
I might have to take that question under notice, Mr Mayor.
That's a main ex-main raised depot.
Is that what that is? Okay, because it's got power and water and
concrete
pads.
And it's still controlled by main roads, if I'm not.
It is? Okay. I've been asking about that one for ages. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second. Councillor Devereux, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, just a few things. I think earlier in the meeting I talked about the difficulty of distinction between office and frontline staff. This report exemplifies that in some areas. So, for example, in the library, where library staff actually go out into the community for reading programs and such like. See staff out into the community to do things, and I think it happens a lot with this directorate. There were a couple of other things. Homelessness is obviously a big issue in Gympie, and so it's been good that staff have been working with the home, I've forgotten the name of the forum is, housing forum, community housing forum, including planning staff in regards to the planning scheme. So again, staff getting out to the community and working to find solutions to housing, amongst other things. There's mention of both the airdrome and the sale yards. The last council, and as a portfolio council, we did discuss this. Last council said that the airdrome, we need to develop some sort of vision or dream or whatever we're going to do with the airdrome long term before we spend too much money on it. And so we talked about that actually needs to come back to council as a whole to talk about where we want to head with the airdrome. Similar to the sale yard, the previous council said, yes, we need to build, somehow have new sale yards built within the region away from the current ones. Left it at that, leading up to this council to take that matter further, and we, for various reasons, haven't done that yet. So, again, hopefully that's something that will happen sometime in the not too distant future that we'll talk further about the sale yards and where we're heading with the sale yards. Other than that, Crab Creek, I did note that there's the erosion control work in Crab Creek, one of my favourite places in that region. But gets eroded. So there's lots of other good things happening in the directorate, and so I'd be happy to move this report be received.
Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. Excellent report. I really appreciate the time staff put into it to put all those details in. I realise that some people might consider it a bit long, but I don't. I just love knowing what's been going on, and as a councillor, it informs me as to what's happening in the region, and I can pass that on. So thank you very much, and thanks to your staff. I will take this opportunity just to point out something that is happening in the community. We've got Georgia, who's been away at the Special Olympics, and she's coming back with 3 bronze medals. So well done, Georgia. It's great to see that sort of the accolades coming to our region that she's bringing us. So that's wonderful. So thank you to your staff, and I hope everyone supports it.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Milne.
I'd just like to agree with Councillor Devereux. I don't think the length is any issue. It's the content and the information that's provided in there. It's not just for us as councillors, it's for the rest of the community as well to see what actually is happening in the directorate. It's a really good information flow because there were some things in there I wasn't aware of, and I bet there's a lot the community isn't aware of. So yeah, keep the length. I don't mind even longer. It's a joy to read. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart, to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. Item 7.2. I'll just check with Councillor Jensen again.
No, she's right.
I don't believe.
No, I'm not. I think something. It must be 7.3.
Yes, no, that's all right. This is the Rotary Club, the Glastonbury Hall, and Perseverance Street here, so I don't think that affects any councillor. That affects any councillor, Deborah? Yes, declaration?
Yes, I would like to stay in the room, but it's more a perceived thing for me. So my daughter, Molly, has just been in a play at Perseverance Street. I will point out that she paid to be in the play, so it is there is a transaction involved, but I think people that know that my daughter's at there and performing might think that I think it's best if we bring it out in the open and then let councils decide if I can stay in the room.
Is there any questions for Councillor Devereux who wishes to stay in the room? Someone to move that he stays, Councillor Smurden, someone to second, Councillor Milne. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you.
I'm not sure you can vote for yourself here,
Yeah.
I'll hand over to Ms Stark. Mr Burgess.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm also going to hand over to Ms Stark, as you rightly pointed out. She's arrived to address this particular report. As councillors will be aware, the Community Grants Programme provides assistance to our community for areas of operation that we provide grants. In that sense, this is the next iteration of the guidelines and programme that we adopted for 2022-23, and Ms Stark's going to take you through the 3 recommendations.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. So the report before you at item 7.2 is regarding the final grant recommendations for 2022-23. So as detailed in Council's community grants policy, for grant categories with a maximum value of over $2,500, grant recommendations are brought to councillors for your consideration and resolution. So the recovery, wellbeing and resilience category of our grants programs has a maximum amount of $40,000, and therefore we're bringing that to councillors today. I'd just like to note for councillors that 100% of the funding for this grant category is externally funded by PHN, which is the Primary Health Network, through funding from the Commonwealth Government. So the report before you makes 3 recommendations for funding. The first one being to the Rotary Club of Gympie for outdoor recreation sessions to activate the new Rotary Exercise Park that's being built down near the River Rail, near the netball courts. The second recommendation is for a grant to the Glastonbury Hall and Recreation Association and that's for a series of resilience wellbeing initiatives. They've got a suite of activities that they're proposing to deliver through the hall and the rec grounds across the road. And the final grant application is for the Perseverance Street Theatre Company for performance and storytelling project, which is going to be working with local hall committees and other community groups to bring experiences of recovery and resilience about the recent weather events. So all of those recommendations are outlined in the report, and we are seeking council's support in approving those recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there. Do we wish to do all of them at once, or would you like to deal with them one at a time?
All in one?
All at once?
Yeah.
Yep, great, wonderful. We have 3 recommendations here before us in relation to grant funding for the Rotary Club, Glastonbury Hall and Perseverance Street Theatre. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? Councillor Smoot, Councillor Stewart to speak.
They're all, Mr Mayor, great projects, great opportunities for the community to, I guess, be strengthened, to be involved with each other. The outdoor exercise park launch with lots of different activities over the next however long. It's a great opportunity to improve, I guess, our health and socialise. Glastonbury community is very fortunate in having a very active hall committee at the moment who are trying to build their community up. And the Perseverance Street is a theatre company that's reaching out and taking their dramas to way beyond our region to other places, and they're certainly great for our young people and older people in developing their skills. So I think they're 3 great projects. So I'm happy to move that we endorse them all.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, okay, Councillor Stewart. Settlements, agree totally. All these committees do something good for the area, and it's good that council can support them with some monetary grants, so I'm happy to second it.
2 speakers for the recommendation, 8 speakers against, any other speakers for. Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Stark. Item 7.3, Community Grants Program.
7.4 actually.
I'm going to leave, actually, one.
Dolly, aren't you 7.4?
No, this is community grants, so there's C1 in this. And then Rainbow Beach on the next one, so.
Right, okay.
I'll
So
leave for both.
can you just make the declaration?
Make it first?
Yes, yeah, we can.
I have a,
Mayor, and just a question, Mr CEO, given that Councillor Jensen, are you going to, for item 7.4, do you intend to,
I'll just stay out.
you'll stay out?
Yeah.
Is it possible to do the declaration for both now, just to save Councillor Jensen coming back?
So yes, yeah.
So I have a prescribed conflict of interest here because Devon Hall gets granted, my husband is the president. And in 7.4, Rainbow Beach Pool, my daughter is the general manager of the Rainbow Beach Club that looks after that. So I'll leave and you will have a front back.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen.
Come and get me.
Councillor Milne?
I, Councillor Jess Milne, inform the meeting that I believe I have a declarable conflict of interest in this matter due to my executive officer positions on several community groups that would be eligible to apply for these grants. Although I have declarable conflict of interest, I wish to remain in the meeting as I believe I can consider this agenda item in the public interest.
Councillor Milne wishes to remain in the room. Is there any questions for Councillor Milne? Councillor Polly?
Oh, could Councillor Milne answer any questions put to her without influencing any of the discussion? So, can we put conditions on her staying at all? Sorry, it's probably a better question.
I guess the question would be, if you're concerned that her answering questions may influence the rest of councillors, then should that councillor then be in the room to be voting on it anyway? You've raised a concern there.
I wasn't sure if there were clarifications that she may be able to answer.
I think
I'm happy if she can.
I know there are. We can have councillor Milne remain in the room to answer questions to assist council in making their decision, but under those circumstances she wouldn't be able to vote on the resolution.
And that's what I was suggesting, I suppose.
So you're suggesting that she remain?
She could remain to clarify any questions.
Thanks. Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, this is about a policy rather than about individual grants. So there's no direct benefit to any of the groups that she belongs to, and she doesn't get a direct benefit, any monetary benefit from those groups anyway. So given that it's a policy thing rather than an individual grant thing, I have no issue with Councillor Meehan or any other councillor for that matter staying in the room. I wouldn't have an issue with Councillor Jensen staying in the room.
Is there any other questions from council before we proceed?
Oh, just like.
I'll just go back to councillor Polly.
Oh, sorry, yeah, no, for some, I think.
That view or?
Sorry, yeah, Reggie, I was thinking we're voting to give her groups money. You're not getting money, it's just, yeah, so that's fine. If it's just policy, that's broad enough.
Okay, so you're happy with her to stay and vote on the agenda item?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Any other questions, councillors? Is there something you showed us?
I just need to decide what resolution, so we've got it as a record on the.
Sorry?
You need to vote.
Yes, that's right, we're getting to that. Yep. So councillor Milne wishes to remain in the meeting. Is there someone to move? She does. Councillor Stewart, councillor Smerdon second. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Yes, let's continue. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, Mr Stark will present the report and the recommendations, but as council will be aware, we have brought this programme and policy guidelines to a previous workshop. We have been able to address some of the concerns raised by councillors during that previous workshop, and Mr Stark will take us through that.
Thank you, Mr Director. As outlined by my director, this report has been brought to council before at workshop. The key issues that were raised by councillors at workshop on the 7th of June were in relation to the community halls insurance category and also regarding whether the rolling grant round could be extended. So we will address those specifically today. So moving to page 2 of the report, we note a proposed change since the workshop. Is that the rolling round be opened on the 1st of July and 2023 and close on the 30th of June 2024 or when all funds are expended. In this way, applicants who are applying for those low value grant categories such as the Get Local Community Grants or the venue fee waiver can actually apply from 1 July 2023 rather than there being a lag until the 7th of August, which is the round 1 of the competitive grants. So in this way, we're ensuring that the program is more accessible year-round until the funding is expended. And the guidelines that have been attached to this report have actually included that change. So I just wanted to highlight that to councillors. The report goes on to outline that there are proposed to be 8 categories in the competitive rounds and 4 categories in the rolling round categories. I would like to present now the specific information in relation to the halls insurance category because that was something that councillors raised specifically on the 7th of June. So at the workshop, councillors requested whether the halls insurance category maximum grant of $1,500 was a sufficient amount for our independent halls in the region. Officers have contacted the 4 independent halls which are outlined in the grant guidelines. And they have a varying range of insurance policies and premiums, with the lowest being approximately $2,400 and the highest being over $16,000. So councils would appreciate there's a great variance in those costs, which seems to come down to the particular provider they have, but also the amount of policy inclusion. So for some of those halls, they have a replacement value on their building at substantially higher than the other ones who have got lower premiums. And for some of the halls, they actually run what would consider to be higher risk activities than some of the other halls, so that has bumped up their their products and public liability insurance. Staff have provided an alternate recommendation for councillors today. Has that been, hand that around? Councillors, we're just providing that to you now. This is a potential change for councillors to consider. If councillors would like to increase the amount available for independent falls, this suggested amendment could do so. However, if councillors do not wish to do so, the guidelines could remain the same.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, we're sorry that this is late, but we only received this information from the halls late yesterday. So this is pretty much as current as we can get. And so we revised this recommendation overnight with a view that council can either accept the recommendation in the report as it is or consider a revised recommendation if that was a desire of council to do so.
Have you finished, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Deborah.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I've got some questions about the insurance. Now, is it just public liability that they can get the insurance for, or is it contents and building? Because there was a bit of confusion around that point.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the grant funding is, and I'll just read directly from the guidelines. The purpose is to support the organisational capacity of eligible community halls to meet their insurance obligations. The priority is to address insurance risk management by contribution to halls insurance. So it can be, they can use the insurance, the grant for any type of insurance. However, it does, as a minimum, they need to include products and public liability insurance to the value of 20 million. So we're saying, as a very minimum, they need to make sure they take out that PLI. If they so choose to take out building and contents, that the amount can be cover off that as well, or towards that.
Can I check the halls that aren't those four, that are not council, the ones that we have responsibility for, we insure those, the actual building itself, do we?
Yes.
We do? And the hall committees can apply for this for their public liability. That's right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. to the value of $2,500.
Wow.
1,000.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors?
Yes. Sorry.
No, you can go.
No, I don't mind waiting.
We've got operationally budget here for $38,000. This potentially could, if they were to maximise this, could be $20,000 out of that 38. We're not increasing the $38,000.
Through you, Mr. Met, that is a potentiality in that there's an extra $20,000 that would be above and beyond the $38,000, and that would then come out of the $185,000 that is allocated out of community development grant funding. So that is a potential increase to our grant budget, but it would actually take away from the community development grants if we were not to increase that through a budget review or the budget.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, council could, at this point now, choose to increase that budget for inclusion in the budget, the draft budget to be adopted for next year. But officers aren't being as presumptuous to suggest that. It could happen, and you could recommend that. Officers would then have to go away and just make sure that budget rebalanced, or we could see what the halls apply for and do it at a quarterly review, which is also an acceptable position. The situation is, and Mr. Stark, please chip in, is that historically those four halls haven't applied for a significant sum of money. Do you want to comment? Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it has been interesting in that the Independence halls were able to go for the full 1,500. Some of the halls did not do so. My understanding, even with the Theobald Hall, for example, applied for $800 when they have a lot higher insurance bill than that.
If I could comment to that, through the Mayor, I believe that would probably be because they assumed they could only apply for the other. So it's good to clear that up so that everyone knows because I notice, we've got all the halls listed here and we're talking about that what do you call it, PLI?
Yes, sorry.
Public liability.
I know what it is. Because we haven't allowed them to, have we, in the past? Because they haven't been under this halls insurance. They haven't applied for it. I've only ever seen the private ones, I thought.
I might need to take that question on notice, but there has been variation over that they have been able to apply in the past.
Under the halls insurance? Because I can only remember seeing the four private ones.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there definitely was. They were.
You go, Stuart.
Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, Nicole Harper actually runs this programme on behalf of council, so she's the guru. She knows the stuff that we don't.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So prior to 22-23, which we're in now, so last year, all four halls were contacted, the independent halls, as they were able to apply through the grant program at the time. So yes, this is not a new thing that independent halls can apply for. It has been there in the past.
I wasn't asking about the independent ones. I was asking about the
others. Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor. There has
independent ones are the ones I saw on the list.
Right. Yeah. So there's been an arrangement in place that council has been supporting council-owned or trustee halls for the whole time that I've been at council, to the tune of either $1,000 or more. In the past, it wasn't through the grants program. It would be that we would just pay the hall that amount without them applying.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I haven't seen it, so that's good. Sorry.
Councillor Deborah.
So you're saying that there's the chance that we can increase the budget into the grants to cover any additional cost. Am I right in saying the visitor information centre, which was 80,000, I saw in here it's back to 10, so that would be 70 there, wouldn't it?
That's a budget consideration.
Yes, but isn't that what you were just saying?
It's not something we can discuss in open council.
I thought you just said we could.
Budget.
My understanding.
No. What Mr Burns is asking for is if there is a desire from council to absorb or include that 20 grand as an extra expense, it needs to be included in the budget, and they would need some indication from council as to whether or not we wanted that. We just can't discuss numbers.
But it's our choice is we take it from other community grants, or we ask for a budget increase for community grants overall. Yeah. That's essentially the choice that we've been given. Mm. And we don't have to make it now, we can wait till the budget review 3 months down the track.
Can I clarify that though? If we make the decision now to have an independent hall grant category at $5,000, potentially we are increasing a budget grab from our community grants for up to $20,000.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just for clarity, they're already eligible to get up to 1,500, so it would be 14,000 increase, theoretically.
All right.
Well, if I could just get clarity on that too, if the other halls were in a different section, they wouldn't be included in that grant money, so that money would have to be catered to as well and allowed for.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I might just clarify with Councillor Devereux. So,
because that's potentially like 25 halls. I don't know how many we've got, 28 or something?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not sure the officers fully understand the question of the halls being in a different section.
Well, we just got told that when we sent them $1,000 for their PLI insurance, so that's not in the grants, is it? Because I just told them
that's still in the grants.
It is now, but it wasn't in the past, so that's something we have to increase it for as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just the 14; it's potentially an additional
Through you, the 38,000 would. So I just done a quick calculation. There's 27 council-owned or trustee halls there. The 38,000 goes to covering those 27. Not all of them go for the 1,500 because they have got a lesser premium.
I thought you said 1,000. You send them.
No, so previously it was $1,000. Now it's a maximum of 1,500, but they don't all claim the 1,000.
I think we're speaking across, but we're going from past tense to present, possible future.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that there would certainly be, by increasing the amount to $5,000 for the 4 independent halls, there would certainly be a bigger ask on the budget, which is currently not budgeted for.
Yeah, that's 14,000, but there's more being asked for the other halls with a potential $1,500.
Councillor Devereux, Ms Starks pointed out that with the number of halls that we have, the $38,000 covers their requirements for ELI based on the traditional use and the traditional amounts, because not every one of those halls needs the $1,500 and has applied for the $1,500 in the past. In the past, we may have given them $1,000 and for them to use, but based on their calculations, historic use and the number of halls that we have, the 27 that's there on the list, the $38,000 will cover that. If we wish to increase the amount of coverage for the independent halls, that would require another $14,000.
Mr Mayor. The original
cover that cost, which would need to be added to the budget if we so chose.
Just having a quick discussion, we think Councillor Devereux's referencing the fact that the way the money was applied to the halls previously has changed and it's come into the grant process. However, the overall bottom line of council hasn't changed. That money a number of years ago existed in an operating budget. Last year was brought into the grants budget and still remains in the grant budget for that 1,000, 1,500, the 38,000 total. That is already there and has been there for a number of years. So it's not as though we're increasing our overall budget to accommodate that this year and taking that out of the grants programme. That's already been there. So all we're really talking about in terms of these private, independently managed halls is the additional 14,000 that they could theoretically apply for. And that would be the only increase over a number of years. We'd have to take on notice how many years that's been in the budget, the previous allocation. But in essence, it's already been there. All the councillors will be considering would be whether they wish to increase that value by 14,000 to accommodate this additional recommendation value, or whether that the grants programme should just absorb it. Or the third position, I suppose, is that we go to a quarterly review or sometime during the year once we know how many people have taken it up.
And yeah, that is an option as they're taken up. Something can come back to council for additional funding if we don't want to approve the total amount now. So before we get to that, because if we're going to discuss the recommendations, I think we'll just leave that till later. Is that what you're looking to do?
Oh, I've got more questions on.
Yep.
Just so for the timing of the whole insurances that have come out, so just so knowing when our budgets will be affected for this, is there indication of when actually those applications came in? Was it later in the financial year or earlier? So when would we know?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. They very much came in later in the year. The way that the guidelines have been amended this year was that they can now apply throughout the year. So if the proposal is accepted to open from 1 July, essentially the halls could start applying in July or August for their insurance for next year, provided they provide us with a copy of their previous premium, their quote or evidence to actually back that they would need the 1,500 or. So they tended to come in towards the end of the year, to answer your question, but there's nothing stopping them from applying earlier in the year. It's a matter of us reaching out again earlier in the year to those halls to encourage them to put their grant applications in.
Mr Mayor, so it's just so they can actually use an invoice that they've already used to apply for an insurance grant to apply for another insurance grant in advance. Is that what that is? You're saying they could use.
Also said quote.
Yeah, well, the quotes come out just before insurance is due.
I think what the staff is saying is that if they wanted to apply earlier and they could get a quote earlier than, say a month before, as they're normally issued, that would allow them to apply.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we're also saying that if they can provide a copy of their insurance from last year, we would accept that as part of the application process, recognising that, and the hall may choose to do that, that value may be slightly less than the new quote. So, but we would accept that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just to clarify, from the grant lines that are before the councillors, the required support material is a quote, an invoice or a receipt evidencing the current or proposed insurance policy. So if you wanted to apply in July 2023, you could have a receipt from your current policy that you took out last year as evidence to say, look, this is definitely going to be ballpark of what we're going to need going forward. We're putting the grant application on that basis. But through you, Mr Mayor, we do understand that the Hall's found it quite difficult to get a new quote out prior to the end of the financial year. As a result of that, we've amended the guidelines to provide them with greater flexibility in applying throughout the year.
And through you, Mr Mayor, that's also why the first point Ms Stark raised today about the rolling around time allocation, we just made it a full 12 months rather than having that 31st of May to 7th of August gap, because there are some halls that have quotes coming in May, and that causes conflict.
Councillor Miller.
Just furthermore, Mr Mayor, the community grants program that we've just got for just the general 185, was that all allocated this financial year?
Yes,
it was, and I'm assuming most other categories were probably allocated.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I've spoken with officers prior to this meeting, and we are very keen to provide councillors with a wrap-up of the 22-23 year. We provide a full report outlining the number of applications we received per category, the funding that's been allocated by council, and provide some case studies to highlight where those ratepayer funds and external funding has benefited the community.
In short, though, Mr Mayor, the allocations have been significantly taken up this year across all categories.
I just have a question in relation to the community progress category 6.1. In the specific eligible expenses, we've got project coordination fees related to the project for a grant of $5,000. It's not a massive amount of money if you're looking to put in any form of infrastructure. Is that the best use of funds if a community group wanted to put something into, is allowing them to get a consultant to come in or someone like that to do this sort of work, is that a good allocation?
Through you, Mr Mayor, so my hearing's not great. Was it 6.1 that you know?
Yeah, 6.1 category community projects, maximum grant amount $5,000.
Thank you.
80/20 contribution. Yes,
so in terms of community projects, with the project coordinator fees related to the project, that's the one that you're referring to.
Yes.
So so these ones are not for capital works projects. They're very much around activities and workshops that increase social inclusion, connection, active, healthy lifestyles. So through you, Mr Mayor, if you could imagine a community group wishing to put on yoga in the park, CrossFit, targeted at young people, the project coordinator fee would pay for an organiser to coordinate all those activities, which is actually the bulk of time and energy goes into coordinating those activities. That's what that fee is, because what we did find with community organisations, it coming down to volunteers to organise a lot of activities, which can be quite challenging for community organisations doing that in a volunteer capacity. So it was to enable a certain amount of money to be set aside for the project coordinators to actually coordinate the activities.
Do we remit that, or is I guess, I understand the challenge around time for these community groups to do stuff, and because they are not-for-profits and working for our community, I would rather see that money going to the community group rather than someone perhaps from out of town that will take the money out of town. And yes, they may provide a service, there's no doubt about that, but the community group or a representative of the community group may be able to do that, if they were remunerated in a similar fashion. Is that an option, or are our requirements around that in terms of ABNs and public liability a little bit too stringent?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To take your point in terms of to the best of our ability ensuring that ratepayer money supports local residents and community groups, as part of the assessment criteria in the guidelines, there is a section in here talking about higher priority may be given to projects. And in that, it mentions that the proposed use of local trades, services and businesses. So, for example, if a community organisation put up a grant application for, say, $5,000 and $4,000 of that was going to a project coordinator from Brisbane, we could query with that group, have you sought the services of someone locally that can do that particular skill or task? I guess the flip side of that is it actually provides an opportunity for local businesses, traders and people to actually get grant funding through a community organisation to put on these sorts of activities.
Is there the opportunity though for the community group themselves to essentially bill for the time that they are putting in?
Absolutely, absolutely, Mayor. And one of the reasons of putting that in there was so that the community organisation itself puts in an invoice to say, these are our project coordination fees, and it goes on their letterhead, and that money goes to the community organisation. They can then choose whether to pay one particular person to do that activity, or they could put it to the organisation to ensure that it undertakes that activity.
So effectively,
they would need to pay it. Actually, they need to pay it to a person.
So could the community organisation say, we expect to spend 10 hours of organisation, our project fees for simple math, $100 an hour, $1,000 of that grant funding will come to our organisation to administer the project, and then have their volunteers go and do that work, and then that money effectively go to the community organisation for other activities or to support them?
Take this one, if you like. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an interesting point, and one that has been circling in my head for some time. Essentially, the community organisation needs to put, if it's over $1,000, they need to put in a quote outlining exactly as you mentioned, the amount of hours at X amount of dollars equals this. What organisations also can do is put in their in-kind contribution, which is about their volunteer labour. Now, under the guidelines, that's capped or valued at $43 an hour per volunteer per hour, and that can constitute half of their contribution. That's going quite technical here, but the group would need to be clear about whether what they're offering is their volunteer labour, which is truly offered up for free and donated, and if they're seeking funding for a project coordinator, it would need to be payable. My office says it would need to be payable to the person in recognition that one of their members or volunteers is putting up their time to do concerted work and deliver time to a budget, etc. So there is a slight distinction between volunteer labour and paying someone to do, like that sport activity I mentioned. It could be that they choose to do $1,000 of coordination as a volunteer, but they'd like to claim $1,000 as paid work to compensate for the time they're putting into that coordination.
Yep.
It would be a combo of the two.
But there is, the good thing is there is opportunity for the community group there.
Absolutely. And through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't see many applications where they're claiming project coordination fees. In the vast majority, it's volunteer labour.
I think most of them are very good-natured community members that look to work hard, very reasonable. Councillor Mills?
Oh, it's just more of a clarification. I think you've answered it, and it was just about the specific eligible expenses, because some of that you have to put 20% in of the project cost anyway. So it's just clarifying that the project coordinator fees, whether it be volunteer or claims, it's clarifying that yes, you can put volunteer hours in as a coordinator as your project cost at the value of the volunteer hours. So you can actually get this off the ground, because that's some of the difficulty of putting a grant in, is you don't have the funds to put in, but you've got time and expertise to put into it that has a value. So I saw that as an opportunity to cover that 20%, which sometimes it hasn't. There's always been 100% or something, or in some cases. But yeah, it is good that possibly there could be some more coordinator fees. Is there a cap on that? Because I know that's highly regarded in your environment grants, where it's 60% on the ground, where they're more highly regarded. Something like this, because I'm probably the same as the Mayor, I'd hate to see something go all into coordinator fees and not into on the ground.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's actually no cap in here in regards to how much we could pay project coordinators. That's certainly something that we could put into the guidelines if councillors would like that. At the moment, we
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Deborah?
Could I, if it's all right with you, Mr. Mayor, to get something put on, a question on notice, if I could get some information back about. I've been going through the 22-23 grant stuff. I can't find that stuff on the hall that's included. Could I just have that pointed out where it is, just for my own? Thank you. So not the independent halls, the other ones, where that comes into the grant.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if there are no further questions, would you like to move to the recommendations?
Yeah, I guess we just seek from council, in terms of the extra $14,000 stuff, probably need an indication as to which way we would go, whether we want to include that up front and the necessary budget adjustments made, or would councillors like to see that as a report back to council as part of a budget review during the financial year?
Are you saying we can vote through the figure?
We can give. We can give.
You said no.
No, I said we can't discuss. Like you raised financial amounts in relation to a budgetary item.
Yeah.
That's not relevant to this.
Okay.
So we're not able to discuss those, but we can actually give the staff an indication as to whether or not we want an increase in this budget to accommodate the extra $14,000 that would be required, or we can say, look, just bring it back to us on a quarterly budget review process. Yes, where do councils, how do you feel?
There's no wiggle in this budgetary as it is right now, and knowing that, you know, budgets are a tight mechanism anyway. We've debated less on things on it's $14,000 that we weren't really considering until not that long ago.
Do we want it up front and change the next way year's budget to accommodate that, or do we want it as a part of a review?
Through Mr Mayor, it's probably easier if we do it as a review from officers' perspective.
Okay.
And then we've got some quantification when we come back, and we can provide that as part of an update process. It's a bit messy doing it the other way. I mean, it's possible, but it's a bit messy. Right. If we do it as part of a review, it's simpler for officers.
Are councillors happy with that?
I just got the one quick. We can review these guidelines at any time.
Through Ms Fair, that is correct.
Okay.
If the councillors would like to set the maximum at 5,000 for those independent halls, I would suggest that if you'd like to consider that today, we actually have an alternate recommendation. If Kristen, you wouldn't mind picking up the alternate recommendation. Is it?
Recommendation 2 on that is in place of recommendation 2 on our report. Is that what you're suggesting? The alternative?
This one here is
With the following amendment.
is the revised recommendation, as opposed to the one that's on the papers in front of you.
So councillors, there are 2 recommendations there. We have the choice between the ones that are attached to your report or the ones that are attached to recommendation 1 and recommendation 2.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Recommendation 1 is for Sorry, Mr Mayor. So recommendation 1 is that council adopts the Gympie Regional Council Community Grants Policy, and we haven't suggested or made any amendments to that recommendation. So the recommendation number 2 is those 2 alternates. The one in the report, which is that the guidelines be accepted as is, or the one from today is that, sorry, Christine.
Yep. So that's okay. So councillors, which recommendation would you prefer as recommendation number 2? The one that's in the report or the one that's on the sheet of paper? We have an indication so staff can bring them up.
I'm happy with the one on the sheet of paper. Giving the extra amount of money to the independent halls.
Councillors happy with the alternate recommendation?
I've got reserves on where the budget's going to come from.
But that can be addressed, as Mr Burns pointed out, in the budget review that is done quarterly. So if there is any concern around...
I just hope it's not coming out of other grant rounds because they're maxed. That's my concern, is where is the organisation going to come from?
We deal with that at the time. If we find that it's undersubscribed and the $38,000 is enough, then there is no need for a budget review. But if staff find that it is subscribed to the level that we hope it would be, there may be a need to come back to us and we can make extra allocation at that time. Are councillors happy with what Councillor Stewart suggested in that the alternate recommendation number 2? Is that the general consensus?
Yeah.
Speak now, forever hold your peace. Righto. Okay, well, we'll go with those 2 recommendations, recommendation 1 and then the alternate recommendations provided by staff. Are we happy to deal with them together collectively? Yep. We have 2 recommendations there before us, councillors. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second. Councillor Smith, Councillor Stewart speak.
Mr Mayor, it's only a relatively small amount of money, I guess, in terms of council budget, but it's certainly a big help to different community groups, and do see projects and events happening that wouldn't have happened otherwise. I know a couple of months ago we approved funding for a park run at Tin Bay, and that's going to be starting this month. That's good. So it's good to see when things happen and to benefit our community. So I'm happy to move that we endorse this policy and guidelines.
Councillor Smith.
Happy to second.
We've had 2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Polly.
Just looking at these policies and the guidelines, and I'm trying to remember back to 2020, 21, when you first started bringing this stuff to us, and so this is light years ahead of where we come from the last couple of years. It's fantastic. It's clear, and you're continually trying to evolve it to suit the organisations with the timing and all that kind of thing. So I'm very happy with where the policy is at the moment. Happy to recommend.
Any other speakers for or against?
Okay.
Councillor Mill.
I've been community involved for many, many years, and these grants are actually fundamental for communities to actually, provide those activities for our residents and visitors. We have actually evolved over time to actually be more accountable for what our granting rounds are and actually give some more specification rounds. The rolling round categories is actually a really good introduction to this council. It had come out from some external funding. I'm really happy to see that keep rolling through. So I'm just happy to have these available to our wider community and to support our volunteer organisations.
There's no other speakers for or against. We'll have Councillor Stewart close.
Mr Mayor, it is good to see the changes that have happened. The community grants themselves have always been presented every year. It's good to see, and the RADF grants, good to see them brought together along with the environment grants, which were always a bit not quite so open. So yes, it's good to have this policy open out for the whole community for all 3 sets of grants.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.4, Rainbow Beach Aquatic Centre proposed funding agreement for 23-24 to 25-26. I'll hand over to Mr Burns again.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you very much. Just going to bring Jason Somerville-Kimlin in. Jason's been having these negotiations with Rainbow Beach Aquatic Centre, so I'd like him to join us at the front here. Jason, you can come up front. Just in case, but essentially, as we addressed at the workshop, councillors were presented with the information regarding the request and counter offer to the Rainbow Beach Sports Club to provide aquatic services at the pool, and this is the report that seeks to approve that change in the funding allocation for that group. I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions that may be brought forward.
Questions, councillors? Okay. I think we've had a pretty good discussion around this, and I know the staff have gone back to the organisation with a number of requests from councillors, so I'm sure we all appreciate your extra effort there. We have 2 recommendations there before us. Are we happy to deal with them individually or collectively? I think collectively probably works, if that's okay. We're happy with that, councillors. We have those recommendations there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Waldock, Councillor Mill to second, Councillor Waldock to speak.
Yeah, very happy with the recommendation. Happy to move. Thank you.
Councillor Mill?
The Rainbow Beach Sports and Rec Club do provide a service to the Rainbow Beach community by running this pool. It has been a collective negotiation to get this result, and it will allow them to continue this service to the community. So I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? The speakers for. So yeah, it's another community group that council subsidises and supports to provide a service. Similar to the surf club, we do a lot of these around the region, so it's great to see it happen, and appreciate the extra effort from staff to go backwards in negotiations with the council's concerns. Councillor Waldock, proposed.
Happy to move, Mr Mayor.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. I believe as we move on to item 8.1, Councillor, we have the asset management policy. Hand over to Mr. Watson, who will take us through this one.
Morning, councillors. So the report here is the cyclical review of the asset management policy. I'll take the report as read. Basically, it's a routine process which we will go through. Probably some notable changes we've made in the policy is around refining the objectives. So previously we had maybe 2 or 3 more objectives. We've slimmed them down, tried to make them as effective as possible, and align with our current status from an asset management perspective. So rather than being large motherhood statements, tried to make them a bit more to the point. And then we have added in some more principles around the policy to help guide our day-to-day activities. So by setting the policy, we'll then follow through with development of a strategic asset management plan, finalisation of class-based asset management plans over the next few years, which is in line with our star rating discussion we've had at previous workshops. And then from there, we really get our asset management practices moving in the right direction. So, yeah, any questions on the policy?
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Fredman, been something you've dealt with in the past?
No, nothing about it, Mr Mayor. I've spent too much time on the beach.
Being pulled from the water?
This is, I've watched these things over the years, it's a very noble policy. It all makes sense, except for one critical thing. Council sets the standard of asset management by our budget. It's not, it's in disguise here, where you say on the 4th last dot point on 4.2 principles, service levels will be a balance between requirement and available funding. So we've got a noble policy says we'll maintain everything, we'll renew everything, we'll do everything we're supposed to. It doesn't quite come out as strongly as it should in that council sets the standard. If, for example, this is hypothetical, if the cost of maintaining roads goes up 10%, we either reduce the amount of asset management we do by 10% or we increase rates to cover the cost. I just think that, I've been chewing on this one for a number of hours, is the best way to put it, but it's our responsibility as a council to do the asset management. We have, on one hand, the skilled staff who can do the technical side, but we have to fund it. If I read this policy correctly, we're under an obligation to meet as much as we can the costs of asset management. And we can vary the level of asset management by just cutting their funding, cutting their real funding, and keeping rates down, or we can meet our obligations by being able to afford this policy, which is saying we will maintain assets correctly. So you put it here in disguise. I would have liked it, and I suppose this is question time, not statement time. Can you rearrange it such as very clear that the obligation is on council to provide the funding to do the asset management task, which is our responsibility?
I guess we can, and it probably comes back to the star rating discussion, which we will be having over the next couple of years to try and really elaborate on what our current budget affords from a service level perspective, and then refining that moving forward. So I guess, and the initial approach would be, we've got a historical budget and we can then match our service to that, but then moving forward, I believe you're correct, Councillor, that we would then start to commit to meeting our asset management requirements through budgetary commitments. I guess I'll leave it on the table. I guess if we need to revise that to make it a stronger statement that we will meet our requirements. Is that
subject to funding, or you're looking, if I understand this correctly, Councillor Fredman, you're looking to have it clearer that the elected representative sets the level?
Sets the level of asset management. I'm not talking about maintenance alone, because there's renewal involved in this. Look, I suppose it worries me that this isn't reviewed till 4 years' time. Hence, I thought it's worthwhile bringing up that we've got to be very clear. We set the level of, council sets the level of asset management. We've got an obligation through our rating policies and through our management of personnel and plant that we can meet this policy. So I don't think we should wait 4 years. I was just wondering if it has to get through today, it's no huge problem, but I don't want anyone reading the policy to forget where the obligation is to fund it. It's us.
Is there some wording that you have in mind, Councillor Fredman, that we could make a change with today and then adopt the policy at a level that you're happy with?
I'd rather, Mr Mayor, not be writing the policy as I sit here.
I think you may have experience in that area, Councillor Fredman.
I spent too much time in the CERB. So, look, if it can be easily, we're here, if we have to adopt their policy right now, then, and it won't be renewed for 4 years, then I'd want it to be changed. If there's any chance of making that adjustment, certainly that sentence is there, but it's obscured. Service levels will be the balance between requirement and available funding. If it can be rearranged through this process today, that'd suit everyone. But coming up to budget time and rates time again, I still correlate asset management with how we fund it.
Question is there any urgent need? Could we have this matter lay on the table with a modification to the policy and it be brought back next month?
Yep. Yeah, no, we can roll it back through the Asset Management Steering Committee and bring it back to Council next month. That won't be a drama.
So is Councillor Fredman moving a recommendation that it lay on the table pending a modification to the policy?
Yep.
And further information around,
funding,
as you've discussed?
Oh, can I just ask a small question? Because our old policy, it had the levels of service were established by a process that balances the community need and expectations with council's resourcing and capability. Is that kind of where you're...
Yes.
That's an old policy.
It doesn't get to the heart of the matter, which is rates. How much we charge people to do proper asset management. Happy to leave it lay on the table, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
Like maintenance.
Fredman has moved, or do you wish to make a comment before we proceed?
Yeah, I also want to make a comment first. I can see where Councillor Fredman is coming from, because I think it might have been the beginning of this term where it was put forward what Capital Works need to do with sewage, and we said yes, 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 no, 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 no. In the end, and then part of the result is that we have these sewer breakdowns. In the end, it does depend on how much rating, but in the end, it depends on what council is willing to pay, and it's always going to be a bit of a dance between how much asset management we want to do and how much we want to raise rates, and in the end, that's council's decision, and I'm not too sure changing this policy will make any difference to that. The reality is that we have to manage not just the assets, we have to manage people's expectations. And so council may engage the community around necessary trade-offs between service levels, whole life costs, etc., etc. So part of our job is to manage those community expectations about what level of service, what level of assets they want. And I'm not too sure changing this policy would make any difference to that.
Councillor Bill.
It's just a number 8 review date. It just says it has a life of 4 years and will be reviewed in June 2027. Is there wiggle room in the review? Because that's actually very rigid in its review date, and you're asking for something that may be reviewed. So maybe even it's just the amendment of the review date, and it's a policy of 4 years will be reviewed within 4 years. It could be at any time if there's an issue, so we can move forward.
Are you still want the matter to lay on the table, Councillor Fredman? Is that where?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay, we have a recommendation or a motion that the matter lay on the table and go back to the Asset Management Steering Committee for changes in relation to that item that Councillor Fredman has outlined. We're ready to vote. All those in... do you wish to address the meeting, Councillor Fredman, in relation to your motion?
Yes, just to summarise, Mr Mayor, it's a very noble policy. I'd just like to get council's obligations into the policy. It's assumed, and I would rather it be in black and white, that it is subject to how we assess the need to do asset management and also how much people are prepared to pay.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Polly, Waldock, Snowden, Hartwig, Jensen, Fredman. Against? Councillor Devro, Milne, Stewart. The motion is successful. The item will lay on the table and come back to council. Item 8.2, proposed renewal of freehold lease to Aluga or Fire Brigade.
Mr Mayor, councillors.
Yep.
Okay, so the first report we have is the renewal of lease to the Aluga Rural Fire Brigade. The Fire Brigade, as we all know, offers a valuable service to our regional communities. I'll take the report as being read and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, councillors? Pretty straightforward. We've done a few of these over the last couple of years. We have a number of recommendations there before us. I'll make the assumption, unless there is objection, that we'll deal with them all at once. Is there someone to move? Councillor Smurden, someone to second. Councillor Waldock, Councillor Smurden to speak.
As for the Rural Fire Brigade, we do a vital service for our community, and I have no problem with renewing this lease. We had a major fire in 2017, which they fought successfully. Yeah, I'm quite happy to recommend that we give them another lease.
Councillor Waldock.
Yeah, another life-saving identity, I guess, and happy to support.
2 speakers for the recommendations. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smurden to close.
Happy to move.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.3, proposed lease renewal, Area W, Aerodrome.
Mr Mayor, the report before you is for Hangar Area W out at the Gympie Aerodrome. This lease doesn't expire to 2026, but we've received a request from the lessee for commercial reasons if we could look to renew their lease now, also requesting a further 20-year term. This lease has always been paid in a timely manner, all fees and charges, including landing fees. We've never had to chase them up for any outstanding fees requirements. I'll take the report as being read.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Smurden.
Was there any specific reason given to renewing it now rather than 26?
For commercial reasons, they have a proposed sale that they're looking at for the hangar, and the buyer, some certainty around a longer term lease than a couple of years.
Any questions other than that, councillors? Have some recommendations there before us, unless there's objection, we'll deal with them all at once. There's someone to move. Councillor Smerdon, Councillor Stewart second, Councillor Smerdon speak.
Just makes sense. We've got the buildings out there, utilised, and this is the way we do it. Happy to move.
Councillor Stewart.
We have nothing further to add. Help pay maintenance.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? No speakers for. Councillor Smerdon closed.
Happy to move.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 8.4.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 8.4 is the review of the tenure for land for adjustment purposes policy that's come due. Doesn't seem that long ago we did this, but 2 years passes quickly. Basically, the policy is very similar. We've made a few changes to expand the purpose out a little further. We've just expanded on the clauses there. We've also expanded out the policy statement to add a little extra verbatim around the comments around that. And the other main change is that we've put in there if there's a adjustment over reserve land, that it's for a period of 1 year, keeping in line with the state's requirements over trustee land.
Any questions, councillors? Have a recommend. Oh, you've got a question, Councillor Smerdon? You're jumping to the gun on.
No, Thank you, Mr Mayor. How much land do we actually have that we use, put in for adjustment?
I'm going to say there's probably about around 15 at the moment. There's probably a lot more out there we don't know about, that as we find out that there is land out there with cattle on, we're making it formal, but we need to know about those properties.
Has there been any consideration given to actually selling some of these areas?
A lot of them are on trustee land, unfortunately, which we can't sell. We can only hand back to the state, so our hands are a little bit tied in that regard.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Smerdon, someone to second. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Smerdon speak.
Again, it's just way of handling what we've got. So happy to move.
Councillor Stewart.
That's just good to formalise where people have their cattle on our managed land.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smerdon to close. That will go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 8.5, proposed renewal of lease in the aerodrome.
The final report is for another hangar out at the aerodrome, lease area H. This one's up for renewal in end of the week. Again, this lessee's provided us with, no problems, always paid on time, no issues at all with our recommendation to renew the lease to them for a period. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, Councillor Holly?
I just know that it's 50 square metres less than area W, and it's $2,000 more. Not for the money. It's good for this one. Is the other one too cheap or something?
That would have been from the market value done back a few years back. Whether that's because of the, where it is to the runway, or what they would have based it on, I'm not sure. I'm sorry, but they probably have some sort of formula that they create their market value on each of these hangar sites.
Location.
Any other questions, councillors? We have two recommendations there. Again, I'll make the assumption, if there's no objection, that we'll deal with them collectively. Is there someone to move? Councillor Smerdon, someone to second. Councillor Wardock, Councillor Smerdon, speak.
I'm cutting it fine as far as renewing the lease goes, but
we're going at this.
Happy to move.
Councillor Wardock.
Second.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? No speakers for. Councillor Smerdon to close.
Happy to move.
With that, we'll go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We will adjourn.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
For 15 minutes before we come and discuss the final matter. Thank you. There's no further discussion required. I'm happy to go to the vote. Are we happy to go to the vote?
Certainly.
All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Polly, Councillor Waldock, Councillor Smoot, Councillor Hartwig, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Devereux, Councillor Fredman. Those against? Councillor Neal. The motion is successful. The matter will lay on the table. That concludes our meeting for this morning. Councillor staff, thank you for your attendance.
Quite a wasted
Happy days.
evening.